So, hi everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about working with sellers. So I'm going to just jump right into my presentation here. Okay, all about working with home sellers. So where can we get some listings as an agent? Okay, so our best source of business is going to be coming from our sphere of influence. Those are people that we know, so people that know, like, and trust us and know that we're in the real estate business. Of course, we have to remind them periodically that we are. People that have decided to list their home, but have not been convinced to use an agent. So those are for sale by owner listings. We can find those in fisbo.com or for salebyowner.com. Expired listings as well. So that could be homes that ideally we would like to relist non-former Keller Williams listings. And we want to make sure that they haven't been, relisted and are currently active. Okay, so those would be people that want to sell their home and have been convinced to use an agent, but their home did not sell for whatever reason. And then canceled listings. So that would be, it's different than a withdrawn listing. So a canceled listing, the contract was actually canceled with the broker, so it's no longer available for sale. With a withdrawn listing, there still could be a contract, even though the property is no longer marketed. So as long as a canceled listing has not been relisted, those would be acceptable to call. So we find these expired and canceled listings by doing a search through the MLS. Circle prospecting. So that would be calling around to the street or neighborhood of one of our new office listings that we have, seeing if they know of anyone looking to move to the area. Have they given any thought to selling their home themselves? Or who do they think might be the next person to move out of the area, out of the neighborhood? Okay, so I'm able to, for any given street, I'm able to give you a list of people's names and phone numbers, and sometimes emails, okay, to reach out to. So those are good sources of listings as well. Absentee owners, we can find these also through the MLS. So these are people that own homes that they don't live in. So these people are, most likely they would be landlords. Okay, so they're renting out their home, but maybe they're, tired of doing that and they would, like to maybe just sell that property. Okay, so we can find out those types of people through the MLS. There's another tool that we can find people that they've lived in their home at least 7 or more years. It's high probability that they're going to be moving again soon. Okay, so we can target those people. Yard sales. I sponsor a neighborhood yard sale in my farm area, and I've gotten a few listings from that. So you could sponsor a yard sale. But if you're just driving down the street and you see somebody's having a yard sale, you could pop out, take a look around, ask them if they might be selling their house. You never know. Then you could always offer them, your services. Make sure you have your business cards with you in your car. Also distressed properties. So we can find those in the MLS as well, or through NARRPR. That's a website that's linked to the National Association of Realtors. So we can find people that are behind on their mortgages. Maybe you can help them out, so they might be more likely to sell. All right, so when we have somebody who's thinking of selling, there's some questions that we want to ask them ahead of time. We're trying to understand, their motivation, their sense of urgency. So we first are going to ask where they're moving to. One of the reasons we want to ask that is, maybe we can help them find a house to buy as well. Or if they're moving out of state, maybe we can refer them to another Keller Williams agent in another state. What's their reasoning for moving there? Do they need to be there by a specific time? All right. Have they given any thought to what's going to happen if their home doesn't sell? Would they consider renting out the home? Maybe. All right. How much do they have any thought of what they want to list their home for? Okay, I like to ask that question just to see if I can get an idea what they're thinking. How long have they owned their home? How much do they owe on the property? Typically, we can find that question, the answer to that first question out by looking in the public records of the MLS. The second question I tend not to ask necessarily unless I think if they recently purchased it and there's a possibility that it might be a short sale, then I might ask that question. Describe your house to me. So if you've never seen it, what are some of the features and benefits, how many bedrooms, etc. What attracted them to the home when they first purchased it? Also, have they done any updating to the home since they bought it? Okay, and what was that? What are some things you're looking for in a real estate agent? Okay, that might be nice to know ahead of time. You can kind of tailor what you talk about based on their response. Some people like to ask, are you interviewing other agents for the job? I don't ask that. Usually they'll tell me if they are anyway. And we, of course, can try to dispel that, and convince them that that's unnecessary. You ever considered going for sale by owner? Now, I don't think I would actually ask that question necessarily up front to put that thought in their head. However, if they happen to mention that they might be selling for sale by owner, then we have some scripts that you can use to explain why that might not be in their best interest. All right, have you sold a home before? All right, so maybe if they've never sold a home before, you might need to be more diligent in walking them through the steps and what that looks like. Is there anything else I should know about your home? Maybe there's some special, I guess, ordinance in the area or an easement perhaps that might be nice to know about. Do they have any questions for you at this point? Okay, then you can tell them that you're going to be sending them a pre-listing packet to review. That's something that we can either email to them or we can actually drop it off in person before our appointment. So you want to, give them a heads up and ask if they'll take a minute just to check, review it. Then you're going to set up the actual appointment to go out to their house. So, try to find a time that's mutually convenient. Just ensure that everybody that's a decision maker will be there. And then just, let them ask, if you need to reschedule, please let me know. So, and of course, I always call or text confirming the appointment, either the evening before if it's a morning appointment or the morning of if it's an afternoon appointment. Okay, so what is in my pre-listing packet? Okay, this is just something that I've customized personally. So like I said, you're going to either drop this off in a packet or email it. I start off with a proposal, which includes thank you letter. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Then I include my real estate bio. Okay, so that's just a little blurb about me personally, maybe, and then a little bit about Keller Williams. I include that as well. And then my marketing plan. So explain in bullet points everything I'm going to do for them to market their home. I'm going to input it into the MLS, which I will explain allows it to populate to all of the other home sites like Zillow, Realtor.com automatically. I'll place a for sale sign in the yard if the community allows for it. I most of the time, almost all the time, have professional photography done. Okay, so I have a couple of resources of people that will take 25 or 30 professional photos for me. I'll place a lockbox on their door and notify them of all showings, and then I'll pass along all of the feedback that we get from the showings. And I will host open houses as necessary. And again, offer feedback. And then I will create some ads to boost onto social media sites. Okay, so that's just another example of going above and beyond. I will order just listed postcards, which I usually use a service called Vistaprint. It's pretty inexpensive. And I will mail that out to the neighborhood and also to target markets that I think, might be interested in moving to this particular home. I will also create flyers and brochures that I'm going to place inside the home. Okay, we have several templates in Command and designs that we can use to create flyers, or you can use a site like Vistaprint or something else to create more professional flyers. I'm going to reach out to one of our vendor lenders, okay, like Wells Fargo, will, for a particular home, give me some mortgage related information that I can leave behind in the house. So if a buyer were to purchase that particular home, depending on their down payment amount at the current interest rate, here is what their monthly payment would look like. I think that can be helpful information to have in a house. I will recommend any ideas I have with respect to staging a home, whether that's decluttering or rearranging of furniture, or even if there's something they could do to spruce up their home, maybe, or increase the curb appeal. We also have resources for real estate attorneys. So when it gets to that point, we can help with that as well. And then I always say that I specialize in, negotiations and transaction management. Okay, so we do all of these things to get the house for sale. Once we have offers, it's very important to be a good negotiator for our seller. In this case, we're representing the seller. And once we go under contract, it's very important to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks during that process. So I explain how I make sure that the buyer is staying on his or her appropriate timeline, okay, with respect to when they need to pay their deposit, what date do they need to have their inspections completed by, what about their mortgage commitment, okay, things like that. I just want to make sure that we're on track for everything. And I say that I stay in constant communication. So, whether that's, once a week on a Friday, I'll make sure to check in with my seller before the weekend. Even if I really don't have anything to offer for an update, okay, just checking in, something like that. Okay, if it's been a few weeks and we haven't had any showings, maybe we need to have a price adjustment conversation, okay, which I can bring in some statistics to discuss. All right, from Zillow, my account at Zillow and my account at Realtor.com, and based on the information that's in showing time, it'll say how many showings we've had over the last couple of weeks. Then I give them the steps in the home selling process. Okay, because not everybody is familiar with what are the steps in the home selling process, including the attorney review period, and I guess preparing their home to actually sell, all the way down to making sure they have a final water meter reading. Okay. And canceling homeowners insurance at the very end and things like that. And it's, again, maybe some tips on just preparing their home for sale, about freshening it up, or a little bit about lighting, or curb appeal, flowers, so things like that, basically. Okay, so before the appointment, I'm going to do some research. Okay, so I'm going to go into the MLS and I'm going to pull up the public records of that particular home. Okay, it's going to tell me when the seller purchased the home, and it usually tells you some mortgage related information. maybe if they did a refinance or took out a line of credit or something like that. I'll pull up the home and I'm sorry, I'll search for sold homes in the area. Okay, so ideally within a half a mile radius, all right, that have sold at least within the last 6 months. Okay, see how many comparable properties I can find. Now I have a separate template that explains pricing differences. So if I find, let's say the home, my potential seller's home has 3 bedrooms, but the home down the street that I found that sold back in December, a couple months ago, let's say, has 4 bedrooms. How do I account for that? Okay. You know, maybe the bigger home, the home with 4 bedrooms sold for 400,000. All right, so maybe I'm going to have to subtract some off of that price to get a good comp for the 3-bedroom house. Just as an example. So this pricing adjustments for different features that a home might have is a separate spreadsheet that I can provide to people. Previewing any active homes in the area. So I also searched in the MLS for homes that either didn't sell, okay, that expired, or because that gives us a clue into pricing as well. Why did that home expire? Ideally, it was priced too high. Okay, we're only looking within the last 6 months. Any homes that are active in the area, I'm going to try to go in before our appointment and see them. I'll preview them so I can see how they compare to the seller's home when I get out there. Okay, so that helps me get an idea of pricing as well. And I would like to drive by the potential seller's home and take a photo of the outside. And I can incorporate that photo into my listing presentation. Okay, that's in Designs that I can customize. I'm going to gather all of my listing materials together, including my bio, my real estate bio, sample marketing materials. So that would be previous just listed postcards and flyers that I've made before for other homes. Okay, and then actual listing documents. So, I mean, you want to be ready if your seller says, okay, let's go ahead and list right now. Okay, so I always bring the paperwork with me, partially filled out. And then even if they aren't ready to sign right then and there, I can leave the paperwork with them to review. Maybe you got a sense of what the seller's personality type was. Okay, or they want somebody that is really only concerned with, you know, facts and figures, so very direct and to the point. Or are they a little bit more, would they be more interested in talking about all of the features that are great on their home and listening to you, you know, talk about marketing strategy? All right, so we definitely want to mirror and match. So if it's somebody that's more direct, we want to come to the point sooner and definitely not come across as being wishy-washy, if that makes sense. And you want to anticipate if there's going to be any potential objections when you get out there that the seller might throw your way, and how would you potentially respond? Okay, and of course I have a list, I have samples of potential objections, and that's something that we can work on and practice ahead of time as well. So right before the listing appointment consultation, I will confirm, like I said, I always try to arrive just a little bit early. I don't park in the driveway, I park on the street, a little bit more respectful, I guess. I knock on the door and then introduce myself. I usually find something to compliment about the house. You know, like, oh, I really love the flowers that you have outside. Or if you can't find anything, you can just talk about what a nice day it is outside, right? Then I ask if it's okay if I just put my materials that I brought with me down on ideally the kitchen table. That could be the dining room table. But typically, it's easier to show documents at a table than sitting on the couch, just one of my thoughts, but whatever makes the seller more comfortable. The first thing, I really just ask them to give me a tour of the home so I can walk around, I can take some notes, and building rapport as I'm going around. And then I might be making a few suggestions here and there. Okay. I'm not usually, most of the time, they're fairly minor suggestions like decluttering or furniture, rearranging, occasionally a little bit of painting, or maybe some new light fixtures, or even new light switches can make a big difference. Okay. After the tour, we sit down at the table and I say, remind me again how many properties you've sold. Okay, great. The last home that you sold, how did that go? All right, so we're trying to glean from previous experience. Based on your experience with previous realtors, what did you like, or what would you have changed or hoped to go differently next time? If you could wave a magic wand for an effortless sale, what would that look like? So that sometimes could be a helpful question. Okay. And you want to reiterate, their reasons for selling. So you said, you wanted to move to Florida by the summer. Is that still the case? If their home needs kind of a fair amount of work, I would ask them if they want to price their house as is or with some fixing up. Okay, I might ask that question. Ask them if they have any questions about the pre-listing packet that I dropped off or emailed. Then you say, based on the information in the package, do you feel I'm qualified to market your home? And if yes, if they don't have any questions, maybe they'll go ahead and sign the paperwork right then and there. Okay, if they're not sure, just ask them, well, what are some of their concerns or hesitations? It could just be something as simple as, well, I'm just trying to get an idea of pricing. I'm not ready to sell yet. I'm waiting until a certain time period. It might be, oh, I need to interview 2 other agents first, which we have objections for, or not really, just responses, I guess I should say. Something like that. So you can say, well, one of 3 things is going to happen today. After I've answered your questions, you may decide to hire me. You may decide I'm not the right fit for you, and you may choose not to hire me. And if I feel I can't help you achieve your objectives, I have a responsibility to tell you that and not to take your listing. Okay, because we have that option too. If somebody wants to, price their home, way too high, you can say, no, thank you. I'm not going to deal with that. My mission is to help you get to Florida on time. Okay, so then you're going to review the comparables. Okay, you could just talk about the average prices in the area, the average number of days that the home spends on the market. You are going to talk about some of the differences. Okay. You would say, are you willing to list your home at fair market value? Do you know what fair market value is? Okay, well, that is something that's determined by what buyers are willing to pay and what sellers are willing to sell for, okay, based on current conditions. So based on these current market conditions, and the comparables, the other similar properties that have sold in the neighborhood in the last 6 months, do you have a feeling where you should price your home in order to get you to Florida by the summer? And sometimes they keep throwing it back at you. Well, that you're the expert, that's why you're here. What do you think? Okay, other might say, well, I want to price it at $500,000. And then you could say, well, Do you think that price will get you to Florida by the summer? If not, do you have a plan B? And then commission question might come up. So how much, commission do you charge? Okay, so we have responses for that. I always give a range, by the way. If they're not going to give me a price, or even if they do, I will give usually a range within $25,000 to $50,000. So I might say I recommend, pricing your home somewhere between $400,000 and $425,000, and it may depend on if they're going to do anything to fix up their home, or how quickly they want to sell it. Okay, and see what they say. But ultimately, the price that they pick to list their home is up to them. Okay, in our listing agreement, it does say that, based on interest in the property, you might choose to reevaluate the price every 10 days or 2 weeks. Okay, something like that. Or you can choose not to take that listing if they're being unreasonable. So right after the listing appointment, I'm going to send a thank you text, email, or handwritten note, whatever seems the most appropriate for that person. I have several thank you and Home Sweet Home notes from Note Card Cafe. Then I'm going to go to my calendar, and I'm going to put a date on there when I need to follow up with this potential seller. Okay, so hopefully we've talked about next steps, before I left, and then I'm going to make sure that I do that. And I will, in the meantime, keep an eye out through the MLS for any new listings or solds in the area, so I can update the seller accordingly. It might influence their decision. If they have more competition, or if some other home sold in the area. So, I remind them of the steps in the home selling process. Okay, so first we're going to determine the price that we're going to be listing the home for, and part of that, and your time frame. Okay, to get an idea of time frame. You're going to sign the listing agreement and the consumer information statement. And fill out any other pertinent documents like the seller's disclosure or the lead paint disclosure if the house was built before 1978. We'll talk about any cleaning, decluttering, repairs, or staging that might be needed. All right, once it's listed, I will explain that the seller will be able to confirm or deny any appointments that get scheduled through showing time on their phone. Okay, if they're into texting, if not, they can receive a phone call or email to confirm or deny appointments. When we get an offer, we'll review the offer. You'll either accept the offer, turn down the offer, or counter offer. Okay, once we've come to an agreement, we'll actually sign the contract. Once both parties have signed, the attorney review period begins. Okay. Once the buyer has done their inspections, they typically will come up with a list of repair requests, or they will ask for a credit towards repairs. Okay, so we'll review that when that comes in within the time frame that they have. So the seller can either agree to them or disagree or counteroffer. You need to make sure they're setting up whatever the relevant township inspection is for their area. Each township is different about what they require. Okay, sometimes it takes several weeks. I use where I used to live, Lawrenceville, as an example. The inspector comes out and he looks for health and safety violations. There's a checklist on the township website, as well as a property transfer form that the seller fills out. The inspector comes out, and then once the seller has repaired everything that needs to be repaired, will get a clear certificate of occupancy that you transfer to the new buyer. And in Lawrenceville, it's actually good for a year at this time. Then the seller's going to need to look into, hiring a moving company. And then, like I said, setting up the process of getting the utilities closed out and transferred over into the buyer's name. So thinking about setting a price for the house, when we do a CMA or a market value analysis, it's kind of a combination of art and science. One of the first things that I like to do is to go onto Zillow, pull up that home in the search and see what it gives as an estimate. And one of the reasons I do that is not because I believe in this estimate, but because the seller has probably gone on there to get an idea of what their home will sell for. Okay, so I like to know what they think their home is worth. For some reason, sellers tend to put a lot of stock into Zillow. You could check NARRPR.com as well. That's that National Association of Realtor Property Resource website. It sometimes gives estimates on pricing as well. Then I go and I search for sold properties under contracts expired in the MLS. Make adjustments for the differences. And like I said, offering a price range, but not too wide of a range. It might be the difference between an as is or fixed up price. I do tell people if they're going to fix up their property or remodel something or renovate, they're probably not going to get their money back dollar for dollar, but their home might sell faster. Okay. Although you have to caution, if somebody says, should I redo my bathroom before listing my home? What happens if the buyer doesn't like, the choices for tiles or vanities that you picked out? Okay, so sometimes a lot of times it ends up being better to just sell it as it is, but it kind of depends on the situation. I let them make that decision, of course. You want to make sure that the seller understands to consider how buyers would search for a property. Okay, so maybe if a buyer is searching up to 300,000, maybe we don't want to price the home at 305. Okay, because maybe buyers have a cutoff ranges that are sometimes in the $50,000 range. So we might lose out on those buyers that were only searching up to 300,000 if we listed at 305. And then like I said, our listing agreement has a space in there for automatic, not price reductions, but reviews of the price to see if it might make sense to adjust the price every X number of days. So if a seller prices his or her house appropriately, it's obviously going to create a lot of buyer and agent interest and generate more showings, especially within the first 2 weeks. Kind of creates a sense of urgency, potential for multiple offers. The offers will tend to be higher relative to the asking price. Okay. And it puts the seller more in control of negotiations. Okay. And ultimately is likely to result in a higher overall selling price in a shorter time period than if the seller had started off with a higher price. Let's just see what happens. And then, weeks go by and the property gets stale and they have to lower the price. So what happens when a seller price is too high? There could be appraisal issues. Okay, maybe the buyer is willing to pay that higher price, but if the house does not appraise, they're not going to be able to get their mortgage and they can get out of the contract and you're kind of back to square one. Okay, you might not have any showings. Okay, so people might think, well, that price is too high. I'm not even going to go see it. Okay, it could create a I guess, a potential image that there's something wrong with the house, or maybe it becomes a stale listing. Okay, oh my gosh, it's been for sale for so long. Something must be wrong with it. You end up selling the competition. So you're going to end up selling homes that are appropriately priced in the area instead. Okay. This leads to stagnation. It's tougher to negotiate. Okay. So the seller is not put in as good of a position. You're going to have lost opportunities for those buyers that are only searching up to a certain price range. And then you're going to have people that just put in low ball offers, okay, which is kind of a waste of time. So as an agent, once you have a listing agreement that's signed, policy is 48 hours to input it into Bright MLS, but you can also input it into other MLSs too. You can input it as coming soon for up to 21 days, which means there can be no showings, or you can put it in as active. I put a lockbox on the door. Okay, if the seller allows it, and I go into my showing time account and I set up the showing instructions. So I have to put in the contact information for the sellers so they can confirm the appointments. And I'll have to put in the code to the lockbox. So when agents click on it, then they know how to get in, access the property. I'll hire a professional photographer. Okay, so that sometimes takes a week or two to get on their schedule. In the meantime, you can either, take your own photos or just have a photo of the front of the home and say more photos coming soon. Okay. Ideally, I like to have the photos, the professional photos in hand before it goes active into the MLS. Okay, because once a buyer sees it for the first time, if they don't like the photos, if you upload professional photos a week later, they're probably not going to see it again. Then you kind of have one shot to make that first impression. Okay, then you can either get a metal sign for sale sign here in the office, or you can order through Sugar Mountain Signs. That's a post sign to be installed, okay. Which I believe is about $100. But they'll install the post for you and they'll take it down. You have to have your own for sale panel, though, which you can order through one of our vendors with your name and contact information, office phone number, and Keller Williams, of course. However, you have to keep in mind that certain homeowner associations do not allow for sale signs at all. And then you're going to schedule, an open house. The seller, if that's something that the seller wants. Print out MLS sheets. I can create flyers and designs, get mortgage information from our lenders. Maybe there's some community information I want to add and put in the house. Okay, so those are all leave behinds. Then I'm going to post that I have a new listing on social media. Maybe I'll create an ad campaign. I'll email the new listing out to my sphere of influence. You can go around to the neighbors and let them know that we have a new listing in the neighborhood. You can invite them to the open house if you're doing one, and a lot of times the neighbors might be looking to sell as well. Okay, so how often did you discuss that you were going to communicate with the seller to update them on what's going on? And what method works best for them? Would it be a phone call, or text message, or email, or in person? Of course, it doesn't have to be the same every time. All right, so when we do get an offer on our listing, we want to make sure that the address is correct. Okay. And then is the price even within the range of our expectations? Did it come along with a loan pre-approval or some type of proof of cash if they're paying cash? So what are the financing terms? So there's a difference if the seller is getting conventional financing versus FHA, for example, or VA. Okay, they're all different. So know the ins and outs of the different mortgage types. How much deposit, initial deposit money are they putting down? A really great deposit amount would be about 5% of the purchase price. Okay, so the more the better. It just shows the buyer has more skin in the game. Is the closing date, does that work for the seller? Is the buyer asking for any seller assist or money towards closing costs? So that could be, that's going to come out of the proceeds. Okay, so that just, we have to keep that in mind. Are they asking for any particular items to convey along with the property that maybe the seller wanted excluded? Okay, typically in the MLS, it will say, you know, which non-fixture appliances are included. Okay, so maybe is the washer or dryer included? Is the refrigerator included? Does the swing set come with the house? Okay, so that would be part of the contract. Are they asking for any repair requests? And are there any contingencies? Do they have a house that they have to sell, for example, in order to buy your house? If so, that comes with a whole other, you know, addendum that talks about when the buyer's house needs to be under contract by, or either party can cancel the contract. Sometimes we get multiple offers. So if our seller gives us permission to disclose that there are other offers, then we can do that to other agents. Most of the time, what's been happening lately is that the seller will pick a date and time to have all the offers in. So you might, as the listing agent, you might reach out to everyone who's shown it and even put in the agent remarks of the MLS that there is, you know, highest and best offer is due by a certain day and time. And then the seller can pick what they want to do. Some offers might have escalation clauses, which indicates that a particular buyer is willing to go X number of dollars over the highest bid, up to a maximum of a certain amount. Okay, so these are sometimes not in the best interest for a seller. So a seller can say they're not even going to be entertaining escalation clauses. And if you have a buyer who puts in an offer that's, you know, way over asking, you have to caution the seller that there might be an issue with the house appraising for that amount. Okay, so keeping the buyer on track with their timeline. So when is their deposit due? We need to get confirmation that it was actually received. Keeping the buyer on track with how many days they have from the signing of the contract to schedule their inspections and get their repair requests in. And when is the mortgage commitment due? So it's definitely advisable to check in with the buyer's lender to see how that process is going. Typically, you can tell if it's coming along. You'll get a call from the appraiser that they're, you know, and I usually meet the appraiser out of the property with my own personal comps to justify the price that the seller is getting. Then you can discuss, this is kind of an initial conversation, or it could be negotiated during inspections. Sometimes sellers will offer a home warranty to a buyer, which will cover them up to a year in the event that something were to break. Okay, so that's sometimes something that's offered just to make a property a little bit more desirable. If a seller doesn't offer a warranty, then the buyer has the option of purchasing a warranty up to 30 days after purchasing a home. And we do have some home warranty companies that we do recommend. So before the closing day, we want to make sure that we have filled out our commission bill in DocuSign forms and sent that off to the title company and attorney so we can be paid. I'm going to check in with the seller, make sure everything's going okay. You've reminded them about utilities. And then I try to think of something of value to give to my seller at the end of the transaction. Ideally, I would like to get some kind of testimonial from them. Okay, I can post on Zillow or my website or LinkedIn. Okay. I'll post a social media post, just sold this lovely home. I'll create just sold postcards and send it out to the same neighborhood. And I will put my seller on some type of follow-up smart plan. Okay, just for, reminding and just checking in with them periodically. Okay, so those are just some of the things that I recommend. Best practices, just making sure that you're listening and having it be more about them than about you. Okay, making them feel important, providing solutions. So finding out solutions, even if you're not sure what the answer is. Being sincere and honest, making sure they understand the process and that they aren't left hanging what's going to happen next. If something does go wrong, and especially if it's your fault, we just want to own up to that and see how we can fix it and do better next time. And I, give feedback as often as you can after a showing, and checking in with them, even if there's really nothing to update. So those are my tips and tricks for working with sellers. And I do have a separate packet of information which has the actual listing questions and a sample listing packet, which is separate from this presentation. So thank you for joining me today, and I will talk to you soon.